You ever find yourself strumming along with another player and just kind of itching to take a solo? Maybe it's a song that you've never even played before and you can follow the chords, but what the heck are you going to do for a solo break? In this lesson, I'll give you a super useful strategy to help you write melodic solos that are almost guaranteed to work. This will help you put in a nice tasty lead into your average strum along. Premium members have access to additional lesson materials like a slow video tutorial of this lesson, downloadable PDF and Guitar Pro tabs, and the incredibly useful SoundSlice interactive tab player. Plus, you have access to an entire library of premium lessons, including the useful music theory course. It really digs into some of the concepts that we're going to hit here today. If you're not already a premium member, you can find out how to join at the link in the description. And now, let's get on with the lesson. Let's start off by playing the opening line or two. All right, remember that the strumming part is going G and then switching to a C chord, then back, and then C again. And we really want to make sure that we know the chords. And if you've been playing for a little while, you probably see that and think G. It's one of your first chords. If you see that, you think C. So if you're watching another guitarist, when you see these and you want to take a solo, use this idea. This is a strategy that I use probably most often when I'm playing a solo. I think more in terms of chords than I do in terms of scale. You could go off and play something using the G major scale. Totally great way to do this, but here's another way to think about doing a solo. Instead of thinking about your G chord here, think about it as a triad, and a little piece of a triad even up the neck. I'm going to start out using this G major triad. So there's my G, B, and D. So we've got a G major chord, and it comes from this bar chord shape here. It's just embedded in there. Nice, neat little ascending order. And I'm really going to think about this as an anchor point for my lead. Notice that when we started, I slid into the second and the third strings, right? Just like this. Now, I didn't use the full triad. I could, but that note is just not needed. And you could do it. You could pick these two to slide into instead. Totally fine. But I wanted this to sound nice and bright. So I'm going to really emphasize the top two strings from my triad here, which is string 3 and string 2. Then what I'm going to do is slide in and then back down. And here I'm thinking about, it doesn't look like much, open G note and then the C on the second string first fret, right? That's all that's happening. But I'm thinking about the C major triad, which is embedded in the chord that you've probably seen a lot of. But I don't really need that fourth string, same as before. So while I'm thinking triads, I'm thinking the chord that matches the triad, and I'm not necessarily playing every note in the triad. You could, again, that there are definitely times when you might want to, but maybe just think of this as the position. It's going to sound really good if I'm playing notes from this over someone strumming a big G chord, right? So let's get back to this. We slid in and ultimately landed there. But there was one note in between that wasn't in either triad. Right there. The A on the second fret of the third string. I like to think of this note as an embellishment. It helps to kind of connect these two things. and have this sort of connected melodic idea. A great little linking note. But now, how do you find embellishment notes that will link to triads like that? I can think of two ways. First off is really the way that I stumbled onto these little embellishment notes around triads, and it really was stumbling onto it. I learned a little bit about triads. I knew that this was a major triad, in this case G. Then I learned how to invert it, and so move the order, change the order of the notes around a little bit. So we've got G, B, D. Well, we can have a G major chord, just an inversion of it if we have B, D, and G. Same notes, different order. I really like that one. It sounds really nice. We're going to come back to it in a second, but you can do that again and get another inversion by putting the D in the lowest note. Then you've got G, and then you've got B. Right? So I learned these. And then I was like, well, what do you do with them? Well, when someone was playing G, I started coming up and doing this. And the first time out with these triads and really trying to use them, I started, just strumming them along with the same rhythm that the other guitarist was using. But eventually, I started just kind of experimenting, right? And this is what would happen in these little experiments. Right? I'm not moving a whole lot. I'm still very much rooted in this triad zone, this triad position, but perhaps I stumbled onto this because it's comfortable. It's got that nice, 2 fret. We love this 2 fret distance, in our pentatonics and things like that. So it seemed kind of natural. And let me make this clear. I did not invent this, but I stumbled on to these notes as working and sitting right around the triad, right? I wish someone had shown me this, years before, but they didn't, and it just kind of came out naturally in my playing. So the other way to really get there is maybe a more direct approach, and there's nothing wrong with stumbling on things. I make light of doing that in my own journey, but really it helped it kind of stick, and I love the creative moments that came from just trying to experiment. And I want to encourage you to just go for it. Grab your guitar. Maybe no one's around, so you're not worried about hitting bad notes or anything like that. Or if you're around someone, hopefully they don't care. Go for it and try to find some of these notes sitting right around, these triad shapes, right? But the other way that you can get there is, perhaps if you're more equipped than I was at the time with a little bit of music theory, and the scale of the key that you're working in this case, G major, then you'd know that E is the 6th, and that we've got A, which is the 9th or 2. And those notes work just fine when you're working in the key of G major. So now back to our example here. You can see that A showing up as a really cool embellishment. If we were to finger this like my favorite little shape here, it really is right out of that, including what we did on the 4th string, right? To end our little phrase there. And we simply slid back up into G. So this time around, we ended up using the E note here on the 2nd string with a cool little embellishment here, before ending us with the G note there. Again, thinking about moving through the chords from G to C. Then the progression changes and we start working around A minor to C, A minor again, and then we split a measure, C and D7. And here's what we play, and see if you can really figure out what I'm doing here. And I just need to finish this. back into G with the triad here on the top 3 strings. But what we really did was focus on the top 3 strings when we were playing over A minor. There's a little embellishment note. Just picking through the triad. This is an A minor triad, top 3 strings. You see it in the chord. But I'm making it a little more comfortable on myself. And then I'm going to hammer up to that D note and slide up. Now you can choose. Now, oftentimes when I'm playing this, we'll play that G note over the E, which ties us back to a C major triad. So I hope you're seeing that the key here is I'm thinking triads nearly the entire time. And I've used them so much that I've learned some common, for me, embellishments around the triads so that really helps me create a solo kind of on the fly right next to whatever the other guitarist is doing. But then here, when we get up to this D7 part, right, the chord changes to this, and I'm playing these 3 notes. So how do we explain this? It's not a triad. There are 4 notes in a D7, but I am playing the top 2 from a D major, and you could play D major, these top 2 notes, and it would be fine. But I want to make sure and let everybody know that I know there's a D7 here, not just a plain D, and I want the C, which is in the chord, in there, right? So once you've got your hand around some of these major triads, and then the minor, right? Another good thing to do would be to experiment moving 7th chords all around the neck in little 2-note groupings or 3-note groupings. That's where this one is coming from. All right. Now in part 2, we're going to climb the neck with a few more triads and embellishments. But you probably already have the keys, the tools to figure out how that part was put together. It's all about learning the triads, knowing where they are on the neck, and then using little embellishments as these little connectors and things that you can do to kind of create some melody just right around the triads. And don't forget that when the chord changes, you need to change to that particular chord's triad. That comes with knowing these things cold. And a great way to do that is to drill these things, drill the inversions on different string sets up and down the neck, and then start either experimenting or using what you may already know about music theory and finding some notes that are great to use as little connection points, as embellishment notes. Now I've put together a triad 1-pager that will help you get these things on your guitar. We go through different string sets and different inversions of the triads to help you get very comfortable using these things up and down the neck. So definitely pick that up. If you learned something from this lesson, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. And if you want to go deeper, remember that you can grab the additional lesson materials like the tabs, slow pace tutorial, and the interactive tab player by joining BGI. You can use the link right over here, and I hope to see you inside my BGI. Until then, practice smart and play on.